What's happening, party people? It's your old pal Tally here, and I'll be honest, I climbed into a Baldur's Gate free ket hole that I have only just emerged from. And yes, I have been romancing Lae'zel, because I've got a thing for women that treat me poorly. I've also got a thing for Call of Duty right now, and being an old man of 26, I've learned Call of Duty's kind of pish these days. My old boy, my old friend, Beans on Twitch has been playing, and I'll be honest, Call of Duty looks awful. Genuinely awful. But here's one thing I've learned. I cannot believe that it took me this long to learn it, because the boomers learned it a long time ago. Things were just better back when I liked the game, and that simply is what it is. The single player was better, the multiplayer was better, everything was better. So, hop up on your old dad's lap, we're going to talk about Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, the good one. Right, let me set the scene for you. It's 2009, you're just back for school, you and the boys, you're gonna sweat nukes all day. Maybe hop on some team deathmatch, maybe a bit of domination. You've got no homework, and your biggest worry in life is whether or not you're gonna pass your physics test. Despite all that, life's good, you're happy. Now I hope you're comfy, because the nostalgia train's leaving the station, boys. Let's go.
Years ago, I lost 30,000 men in the blink of an eye.
Right, I won't spend too much time talking about the campaign. The video's not really about that, but it would be a shame if I didn't mention it. This was my first COD, and I'm one of those losers that wanted to complete the campaign before trying online. Man, it was just a banger. The gameplay was nice, the music was nice, the story was, well, it was like playing a Michael Bay film. You know, lots of explosions, some twists, some turns. And it was nice. I remember every once in a while I'd stay at my grand's, and at that point in time she didn't have the internet. Wild, I know. But that meant I'd sweat the campaign, and as I'd get more COD games, I'd end up just doing like a campaign marathon. God, what a great time to be alive. I remember as well my stepdad and I, like, we'd just have like game night, and we used to take turns playing the campaign. And my little brother would watch, which in hindsight's really f***ed, because he was 6 at the time. And speaking of my little brother, one time he asked to play against one of my mates on Rust, and I said, dude, please, go easy on him. So what did he do? He pointed a sentry turret at his spawn point, and then my little brother started crying, like really crying. At the time, I was livid, right? Furious. Now, that's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. But back to the point at hand, the campaign was sick, right? You had levels such as Snowmobile Simulator, Olympus Has Fallen, Jesus Christ, a terrorist attack. Holy moly, man. No Russian really was something, you know? You commit an atrocity, and then you die. I'd never played a game where the main character died. I was traumatised at this point. You know, little me was introduced to the concept of mortality, and I was like, whoa. And then they did it again later on in the game. I didn't even mention that you do literally play through a Michael Bay movie in the Gulag. Anyway, once Roach dies, what happens? Well, you play Soap the Stud McTavish, and recently freed and ready to breed Captain Price. And they're here to personally take revenge on Ghost and Roach's killer. And the hype is through the roof, lads. This army of two just mows their way through Shepard's base, like that one clip of Danny DeVito.
Anyway, I started blasting. Bang, bang.
And it turns into some sort of like wild boat chase. Love that. And I never thought a boat chase could be cool, but they've only went and done it, haven't they? And lastly, the game's capped off with one of the most badass scenes ever to exist. When I see this, I turn into Joe Rogan talking about the £800 silverback.
Crazy 800-pound silverback is bursting through the trees. Fucking Diesel square-headed destroying machine.
So you rip a knife out of your chest, which is apparently, by the way, super bad for you, but it's okay, because you throw it into Shepard's eye. You can literally hear the celebration horns. Man, what a cool campaign. What a great time. So yeah, I loved the campaign, loved it 13 years ago, and I loved it when I played it recently. I mean, no matter what, it's better than like the Modern Warfare 3 campaign. That looks like shit. Now, I'm not really going to dwell on Spec Ops too long either. It was cool, you know, it was a bunch of missions that you could play through back when games had post-game content. Some of it was fresh stuff, and some of it was based on campaign levels, which was quite nice. It was a decent time, but it just never gripped me playing it solo. I really liked playing it on co-op, but literally no one ever wanted to play, which is a shame, because if they did, I'd probably like it a lot better. Except that mission on Estate with the Juggernaut. F*** those guys, f*** that mission. And as well as Spec Ops, there was a museum, which was pretty cool. I loved that there was like little snippets from all the levels in the campaign. It was a nice little thing to look through. Then I pressed the button, and my 13-year-old head exploded. And that pretty much sums up everything I have to say about Spec Ops. Man, oh man, oh man, where do I start with the multiplayer? There is genuinely just so much to talk about. Like, the game was a cultural juggernaut, but honestly, like, we're still feeling the effects of this game today. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's kind of start at the beginning. So the first game I ever played on Modern Warfare 2 was Free For All on Karachi, and I went 9-3, which at the time, like, okay, not a good score. But at the time, astronomical. I was the best player on the planet in my head. I remember I used the UMP45 like pre-built class. Always loved that gun. Always stellar. Or maybe the game stands out because I do remember being relentlessly bullied. Almost immediately. So when the game came out, I think I was 13 and I hadn't really hit puberty yet. I still don't really think I have some days. Have you heard this voice? Anyway, the very moment that I spoke up, everyone was dogpiling me. I will tell you, everything you've heard about Modern Warfare 2 lobbies is true. They were vile, they were repugnant, they were awful, right? You know Han Solo, he talks about how the cantina's the hive of scum and stuff like that. So are Modern Warfare 2 lobbies, right? If you don't believe me, watch this.
You won't be able to cheat with my fits in your face, you old
You know, you don't see that quite as much today. I mean, you still see it a little bit, you know, there's still losers out there. But 2009? Nah, man. No one had even thought about dealing with consequences back then. I remember watching an old podcast, PK, and they were just debating the use of the N-word. They're all white, by the way, like it was just a bunch of white guys just talking about what's okay. Like, no wonder half a generation turned out to be psycho edgelords. Because we were all just feral. We were all just the absolute worst. There wasn't a lobby where a slur wasn't dropped. It really was like the Wild West of the internet, you know? Everyone says it, but it really was. But despite all that, I was drawn in by all of the things people loved about the game. It was really fast-paced, it was exciting, there was loads of action, loads of gunfights, and that just hit every single dopamine receptor in my brain. I loved it so much. And at the time, I suppose I had this blissful honeymoon period where everything about the game just seemed perfect, and no matter how bad I did, every single game had this charm that made the loss just not sting. You know, at that point I was terrible at the game, but that just did not matter. And then it started mattering, because it turns out no one wants to play with you if you suck. And speaking of, you know, this game actually did like wonders for my social life, because I just didn't have one prior to this. I was an awkward wee prick, and I'm still a bit awkward today. And it opened a lot of doors for me at the time, you know? Boys that I was then friends with for years. Unfortunately though, we'd often have 7 players and there's only 6 on a team. So back to reality, here I am, bottom of the board player, the absolute worst. Are the lads gonna want to play with me? No. So there's only one thing for it. I started a training arc. And that's what I did. I just went on like a pure training montage week. Didn't accept any party invites, didn't chat to anyone, just got my head down and started grinding. And I was grinding from like when I got home from school until when I went to bed. So we're talking like 6 or so hours a day, maybe a little bit longer on a weekend, you know, real hardcore session. And when I came back, I tell you, I was such an acceptably mid player. I was okay. I was described as not bad, man. I wasn't really good yet, but, you know, I was good enough to never be kicked out again. So moving on to the actual multiplayer experience, I don't know if yous have cottoned on yet, but I loved it. Everything about it genuinely did feel like pretty good to play. Like the movement, again, it's like not as fast as modern CODs, but to be quite frank, I don't know what the kids are doing these days. It looks like every player is having a seizure every time I see a clip on TikTok. Anyway, back to the main point, it felt really fast back then. Everything felt really quick to do. The perks really helped that. You know, you had things like lightweight, sleight of hand, that were all real improvements from your previous iterations. So the game felt exciting, you know, it always felt kind of exciting at the very worst. At its highest, you know, it was a blast all the time. I think in part that was also helped by the map design. There were some stinker maps, you know, there was a couple that I really didn't like. Everyone seemed to hate Estate, but I kinda liked it. But so many of the maps, like on launch, post-launch and the DLCs, felt really fast. They just felt like you could go from point A to point B really quickly. You never felt really far away from the action. The kill streaks too. In COD 4 and 5, like the kill streaks were UAV, airstrike, and then chopper gunner or dogs, depending on what you're playing. Here you've got like a million options, and a lot of them are actually genuinely viable. Again, everything has a meta. There are absolutely the best kill streaks. AC-130, Chopper Gunner were insane, the Harriers were insane, the Pavlo was insane, but you didn't see that many people run it because it was like the 4th most insane option. And of course, like, if you weren't that good at the game like me and you couldn't string together 5 kills without dying, you could go simply UAV counter UAV Predator. And because there was that variety, there just wasn't ever a clear sky. There was always some sort of air support or a UAV or a counter UAV, and that really helped the speed of the game, I think. Everything was going on at once. And as I kind of wrap up this little section of the video, I want to talk about the weapons a little bit, because I think that was such a huge contributor to the success of the game. So many weapons felt good to play. Of course, there were still the best guns. You know, the ACR was an absolute laser. The UMP-45 was just always pretty powerful. You know, there were the best guns. There was such a wide range of like tier 2, tier 3 weapons that you could play, and you could still have fun. They kind of took the approach of if everything's broken, then nothing's broken, and I loved it. It felt really good that while I was playing with guys that sometimes could be a wee bit sweaty and have their sweaty loadouts on, I could rock up with not quite the meta and still keep up with the boys and still have a good time. I was the only fan of the MP5 that I can remember. I loved that thing, man. Loved it with all my heart. The game definitely wasn't perfect though. You know, there was the infinite care package glitch early on that I'm pretty sure I managed to avoid, but I've heard stories that it just wasn't fun to play against. Another one that I managed to avoid was the 1887s, where they got the damage calculation backwards, so at range, these things were absolute monsters, but they were like wet paper up close. There was the javelin glitch too. I didn't experience that one, but that was also quite bad. Like, the game definitely was flawed, and all those things I just mentioned eventually got patched. There were some things that just never ever got fixed. One Man Army noob tubes really was a game ruiner, honestly, and I say that in the most literal sense. One day I just got back to back noob tubed, and I kicked my Xbox so hard that it red ringed. I'm not proud of that, but what are you gonna do? One Man Army noob tubes, am I right? Commando too. Commando was such a frustrating thing because it really showed you who was panic knifing, you know, because you would have players that just kind of turn a corner and immediately they've teleported 8 feet inside your intestines with their knife. And you know that they didn't mean it. They just flinched, clinched up and hit the knife button. Commando was so good at what it did that it just absolutely destroyed anyone vaguely in the way. And for everything that I learned to love about the game, there was something that I learned to hate about the game. But yeah, I started to see all that after that training arc. Alright, so since I'm mentioning the training arc, around then was when I started to watch COD commentaries and COD content, so I think now is a really good time to do a little bit of a tangent. Because in preparation for this video, I went back and I watched a lot of the old COD content that I used to watch when I was a kid. You know, guys like Woodysgamertag, I used to watch him all the time, like for years. He was very much like a dad to the lost boys of the COD community, because so many of us didn't have fathers. And he would do Mail Monday, and he would just give out like fatherly advice. For years though, I also religiously listened to PKA, a podcast that started because of Modern Warfare 2. It's still going on to this day. You know, he's hosting it with his co-host Taylor, and convicted felon FPS Russia. Now I've drifted off of that podcast, but back then, oh man, every Saturday was just get up, put on PKA, and do my grinding for the day. And I feel like you can't mention PKA without mentioning the Conway conman himself, Wings of Redemption. It's funny, because these days, you know, he's a bit of a lol cow, which I think's a damn shame. You know, he's not an evil, nasty guy. But if you go back in time a little bit, you can actually really see how he got off the ground. Like, he just came off as like a really nice guy. Obviously tells some tall tales here and there, but he just came off as like fairly endearing when I went back to watch him. Except for that one 1v1 that we all know about.
Fuck! Why the fuck you stream that shit?
And in my search for like old COD content, of course I went back to go watch Blame Truth, the COD father himself. And all it's really done is prove to me that time's a flat circle. The man was talking shit about Modern Warfare 2 in 2009, and he was talking shit about Modern Warfare 2 in 2023. No hate though, you know, I miss when he did Pokemon videos. Oh, and I can't wait to see him and Hutch boxing on some Jake Paul versus a retired old man undercard. That'd be great. Speaking of Hutch, man, used to love Hutch back in the day. I remember that was actually how I found out about Wings of Redemption, because him and Wings did a quick scope v no scope COD commentary on Wasteland back in the day, which I think is one of the most unintentionally funny things I've seen in a long time.
And that's like a little cat and mouse game I call edgy.
And then if you're mentioning Hutch, of course, you've got to mention C-Nanners, you've got to mention Sark.
Yeah. Oh.
And I remember C-Nanners used to be simply the GOAT. His voice was just pleasant to listen to. Simply one of the best. And then he went off and he made Minecraft famous, which was crazy.
I can make tools, I can make all kinds of things.
And then he went off to be a dad and he just hasn't posted since. Fair play to the lad. And I didn't watch loads of Sark back in the day, but any time that Sark was on my screen, I was always fairly okay with what was going on. He was a pretty funny guy, he's still kinda at it. Recently seen him on Jay Schlatt's podcast, and that was hilarious. They were actually talking about this stuff, this old COD YouTube. Go watch it. And of course, if you're going to mention all of those absolute goats, we've got to talk about Machinima Respawn. For those of you like way too young to remember greatness, Respawn was a multi-channel network, or MCN, and it's how old YouTubers got paid before everyone and anyone could make a living on this hell site. Their whole strategy was getting people to sell their souls in perpetuity so that they could upload a video an hour to farm as much content as possible. Their bread and butter was of course Call of Duty, but you had Halo guys on there, Battlefield guys, whatever other game was coming and going at the time. And if you've seen that logo at the start of a video, it kinda was like a badge of honour. In retrospect, it's a sign of abuse, but you know, back then we were like, whoa, this is a Machinima creator. And you would be shocked at how many names these days were Machinima creators or associated with Machinima back in the day. You know, you've got KSI, yeah, the Prime guy, he was an old COD head.
Hey, it's your boy KSI Legit PT. We are on Terminal, yeah.
And then a little bit later, PewDiePie got his start on Call of Duty before he was screaming at Amnesia.
Hey, what is up guys? My name is PewDiePie. And yeah, today we're gonna celebrate because I got 100 subscribers.
And then there's Jericho, who's absolutely killing it today, but back then he was in my favourite video ever associated with Call of Duty.
Hey Kinky, what's your GB rank? Huh? What's your GB rank? Mine's 1! Ah! I'm the best there is! I'm the best there is!
There was Doc Disrespect 2, and then Captain Sparkles. Yeah, the fucking Minecraft guy. Yeah, the Minecraft song parody guy. used to go booster hunting when his name was Pros Don't Talk Shit.
How's it going, guys? My name is Jordan, and you're watching the 4th edition of Modern Warfare 2 Booster Destruction here on Machinima, and I'm hoping I can make this the most exciting episode so far.
And then I wonder whatever happened to Only Use Me Blades.
I'm cleaning my throat.
Nope, maybe I'll stop now. Now I really am gonna sound like a boomer, but kids these days, they've got it so good for content, man. There's thousands upon thousands of people trying to be the new top COD streamer. You've got a million guys posting to YouTube in 4K just to be the new Zombies guide or Battle Pass review or Warzone guy. There's almost too much. You know, but who am I to say anything? I'm a nerdy white guy posting video essays about games that he likes on YouTube. Pot meet kettle. Now back to talking about cool content. Do you remember montages? I do. I hated them. Someone online once said that they were just pointlessly flashy and dumb, and I just kind of latched onto that. I was wrong, you know, that shit was fun. So I started getting into them, and I had so much to catch up on. I had people like iReaps, who back in the day it was just like some weird mystery. You were like, is iReaps a boy or a bird? Who cares, the clips were sick. Around then, Optic were getting together, they were becoming a real thing. Phase 2, you know, a lot of big names in the content scene these days. And Zergriz, you know, we can't mention montages without mentioning the absolute GOAT himself. And even the drama was different back then. You know, these days drama's like real drama and people get hurt. Back then it was like, oh, you posted in Pets and Animals, you did a giveaway, or you boosted your video by changing the name 5 hours after it went live. You know, one of the biggest dramas that they ever seen was G-Unit faking his nuke with a 6-man nade right off the bat. By good golly gosh, I've never seen anything so blatantly fake. Props to the man though, he had the absolute balls to deny it until Hutch got him on a call to make him admit it.
Right off the bat, was the world's fastest nuke video legit?
Nope.
It was not legit. The killstreak-less nuke with just knife only legit?
Nope.
Okay.
And you know, back then, content standards were just on the floor, absolutely in the ground. Whenever you clicked on someone brand new, it was like playing Minesweeper. You'd either get someone who had a bit of production value, or you were getting someone with the worst mic you've ever heard, telling you about their day at high school, because most people making content back then were genuinely children, and the other half were adult men with jobs and families. The dichotomy was absolutely there. Also, I don't know how to play Minesweeper. And that's just really how things were back then. The quality was generally lower, but there was this weird authenticity to everything that kinda makes it endearing. So many people these days immediately get into playing a character and they have their content voice and their content mannerisms. Back then, these guys would stick on their recording software and just talk nonsense for however long the video was. Oftentimes they wouldn't come prepared, oftentimes there'd be large uncomfortable silences, a lot of throat clearing, but that's just how it was, man. The content was about people, the content was about someone's day or someone's problems, and it felt really personal, and it did get a wee bit parasocial, I'll admit it. Please someday tell me that I'm not alone there. But anyway, tangent over, back to the game. So, speaking of montages, I remember me and the boys used to absolutely go feral for that stuff, you know, after I seen the light. And I remember we'd be out there quick scoping for clips on a Friday night, Saturday morning, Sunday evening, who cares, man, we'd be out grinding. No one would ever use them, but if we said we were going to post them, then it would feel extra sick to land the game-winning kill cam. Now, you can probably guess what I'm going to say. I was never good at the whole sniping thing, but I still tried, because if you were that one guy using a normal gun in a quickscope lobby, you might as well jump off a fucking bridge. I never really was great at it, but you know, even a broken clock's right twice a day. I remember I hit my first triple, me and the boys went absolutely insane.
Oh baby, a triple!
That might have been my last triple, but even I, every once in a while, would hit something absolutely sick. And whenever anyone did hit an absolute banger, you could hear it pop off in game chat. And that was just one of our many phases. We had quite a lot of them. There was the S&D phase, there was the hardcore phase, the free-for-all phase, the nukes phase, the competitive phase, and it just always seemed to keep the game fresh enough. And since I've mentioned the search and destroy phase, I am obligated to talk about it for a while. I loved it. I started off really hating Search and Destroy, but over time I actually got pretty decent at it, and I feel like me and the boys get decent at being a team together on it. It's one of those game modes where having a couple of absolute monsters in the team helped even better, because they could go do stuff, they could go out and get the kills, and I could just go plant the bomb and be useful that way. I loved a good objective game mode. And we had the perfect team composition. We had 3 guys that were really good slayers, 2 guys that were absolutely phenomenal at playing the objective, and then we had the psychological warfare. Now, psychological warfare was one of the boys that we used to play with, and much like myself, he wasn't a dominator at the game, he wasn't a grade A killer, but you know what he was? Just ready to say the most vile stuff. So here's what would happen. He would spawn in, immediately Semtex his feet, and he would sit in game chat. Because back then, there wasn't Discord. Barely anyone was using Skype. If you were playing Search and Destroy, you didn't have party chat. So he was in game chat, waiting like an alligator for someone to, die in game and fall into his trap. And the second they said anything, he was on them. He was saying the wildest, vilest shit that I cannot say on YouTube today. One time, I died mid-round, and the first thing I heard him scream was, "Put your head in my f***ing ass and wear me like a f***ing hat." And I'll never forget that. That's burned into the back of my mind forever. That was just a weird situation, but that was what he was good at, because he would get everybody on the other team tilted. And when they're tilted, they're playing worse. And if they're playing worse, then we're mopping up the game rounds 2, 3 and 4. It was a great strategy. Yeah, it was mainly 5-on-6, but that 6-man team does not matter, because they are not playing the game well at all at this point. They are just seething. Some of them, they're killing themselves so that they can shit talk him, and he was a fortress man. Utterly impenetrable. You could say the wildest shit. He just did not care. And I suppose I'll start to round things off by saying the game wasn't always fun. It wasn't always the game that brought me all of that joy, The game itself was actually frustrating at times, and we kind of played through the dissatisfaction. And we'd always come back to it. Me, the boys, even COD commentators, they would make videos about themselves destroying their Modern Warfare 2 discs.
Fuck you. Fuck you, shitty ass piece of... Oh, I'm done with it.
They would make that video another 2 or 3 or 4 times because they just kept coming back. It was kind of a comfy place to be. I miss it. I miss being young and having no responsibilities. I miss school being the hardest thing that ever happened to me. School was easy. I just should have handed in my homework on time. I miss getting excited about map packs with the boys and getting on just to find out that the servers couldn't handle everyone logging on at once, so no one was playing the map packs that day. I really do miss things like the silly arguments that get dealt with a 1v1 on Rust. And it would always be interventions only, and everyone knew I was pish at interventions, so that's why I just could not win an argument with anyone. But none of it mattered, And I even miss those boys sometimes. After high school, we all naturally went our separate ways. Some people stuck together, some people didn't. But I suppose it is true, and it's cliche. But you never know you're in the good old days when they're happening, only when they're done. So at the end of the day, regardless of its faults, regardless of the things that were clearly broken, I cannot help but look back at this game and just be a nostalgic little dweeb. And that's it for me. I look back on old COD games that I used to play with the boys, and we used to cause chaos. And that was when COD was good. That was when COD was great.